Hello and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to show you the second and final part of my two-part Vampire Bat Cupcake series. In this video I'm going to show you how I sand and smooth the exterior, paint and dry brush, sculpt the polymer clay features, antique and glaze, and then I will also show you the final assembly. If you want to see more paper clay videos, please click subscribe and you'll be notified anytime I upload a new video. Sand and smooth. The first thing that I like to do is sand my cupcake to remove any deep ridges or burrs. The tool that I'm using is a Dremel 7300. You can find a sanding tool like this at any hardware store or craft supply store. Another tool that you can use to smooth the surface is sandpaper or a soft sanding block. When I'm sanding, I like to start with the face. This part typically takes the longest time and requires the most care so that you don't damage any of the sculpted features. Once that is finished, I move on to the main body of the cupcake. Sanding vertically helps to keep you from leaving marks as you smooth the exterior. Now it's time to smooth the inner edge of the cupcake base. Because I use a fibrous material to strengthen the base, this step aids in blending the two materials together. Once I've made my way around the inside, I sand the outer rim. I decided to experiment with this project by giving it wings. Let me know what you think down in the comment section of the video. Sanding the wings was a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be. This step actually took quite some time to complete. I decided to carve some shape into the wings, just to give them a little bit more character. Time to sand the top of the cupcake. Y'all, this was a hot mess. Now we're all sanded and ready for paint. The paint that I like to use is a chalk furniture paint. This particular shade wasn't available, so I had to create it myself using a DIY chalk paint recipe and dyes. Let me know down in the comments if you would like to see how I made it. I always start off with a base coat, being careful to get my brush into all the little nooks and crannies. I went ahead and painted a base coat of purple on the cupcake top. I'll show you why later in the video. Okay, time to dry brush. The first layer of dry brushing, I use a white chalk paint. I make several passes over the entire surface, paying special attention to the high spots to highlight all the details. For the next layer of dry brushing, I use an acrylic paint in a soft pastel pink shade. For the final layer, I dry brush over the entire exterior using the color Royal Fuchsia. I find that using several shades and several coats give the finished product more depth. Okay, now I'm painting the nose, inside of the ears, and blushing the cheeks with the same color fuchsia I used for the final dry brush. For the top, I wanted to experiment with color, so I painted the whole thing purple, and then I dry brushed the entire surface using a white chalk paint in several layers so that the whole thing is white with a hint of purple peeking through. Painting on the eyes. I paint the eyes using a white chalk paint for the first layer, and then I set it aside to dry. For the iris and pupil, I use an acrylic paint. Before I paint on the eyes, I like to pencil in the iris and the pupil so I know where I need to place them. I don't know about you, but I always struggle trying to make the eyes match. It usually takes me several attempts to get them even. Now it's time to sculpt the polymer clay features. For the teeth, I use Primo Sculpty Accents in Pearl. This polymer clay is super glittery and slightly translucent. It's also slightly stiff, so it's a good fit for making these teeth because it holds its shape as I smush it into the lip and adjust its position. Time to pull out the fangs and set them aside to start working on all the sprinkles. Okay, to make the sprinkles, I work the clay to make it soft, and then I pinch off small amounts and roll them into a ball in my palm. Then I smush them flat using my index finger and thumb. For the sprinkles, I use Primo Accents. The black is Primo Accents in the shade Twinkle Twinkle. The lavender is Primo Accents in the shade Purple Pearl. And the pink is a bit of extra polymer clay that I lost the package to. Sorry, y'all. Now I'm going to get going on this adorable little pumpkin cherry. To make this little pumpkin cherry, I used another piece of the scrap pink polymer clay, and then I twisted it together with a quarter-size piece of Primo Accents Purple Pearl, and then I rolled it into a ball shape. The first thing I do is poke a small hole in the top to make a place for the stem. Then I poke a hole in the bottom to place the stem into so I can attach it to the top of the cupcake. To make the ridge, I use a sculpting tool. I don't normally do it this way, but for this project, the sculpting tool worked out just fine. For the eyes, I use a sculpting tool to make a triangle. And then I poke into the triangle several times to make a cross-hatched pattern. This pattern helps to hold in the paint. I use the same tool for the mouth. I draw out the outline of the mouth by poking my sculpting tool into the clay. And once I'm finished outlining the mouth, I use the same cross-hatched pattern to fill it in. To make the nose, I use pretty much the same process as the eyes. Time to bake the clay. I bake my clay at 250 degrees for 15 minutes per quarter inch of clay. This batch I bake for about 20 minutes. To glaze the top of my cupcakes, I use generous amounts of Mod Podge and glitter. You can get Mod Podge at your local craft store. The glitter I picked up at Michael's. I start out by applying a generous amount of Mod Podge to the top of my cupcake. And then I sprinkle on some glitter, making sure to shake off the excess onto a scrap piece of paper so I can easily pour it back into the container. Once you've finished the first layer of Mod Podge and glitter, you need to set it aside to dry for about 30 minutes. To glaze the bottom half of my cupcake, I use a watered down cream wax. I work in small sections and wipe away the excess as I go. Then I set it aside to dry. It's time for the final step in the process, assembling the cupcake. I use a combination of both E6000 and hot glue to ensure a permanent bond. To assemble the cherry, I start out by adding the stem using E6000 and hot glue. To make the cherry stem, I cut a 2-inch piece of floral wire. To keep the ends from coming apart, I twist the top in a small amount of hot glue. To attach the stem, I place a small amount of hot glue in the top of the cherry, and then I slide the bottom end in. Time to add the sprinkles. Now that the first layer of Mod Podge and glitter has dried, it's time to add the sprinkles. To do this, I dab a small amount of hot glue onto the back of each sprinkle, and then I stick it down. For the teeth, I use E6000 to hold them into place, dabbing a small amount under the lip and then running a small bead down each tooth before pushing them into place. Now I need to assemble the cupcake and add any extra sprinkles. Temporarily fitting the two pieces together also helps me to figure out which way the cherry needs to face when I get the whole thing completed. Now that the cherry is dry, I'm going to take a second to paint the eyes, nose, and mouth. This little guy came out so cute. Now it's time to seal all of the glitter and sprinkles up with a final layer of Mod Podge, and then glue the cherry on top. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you want to see more paper clay videos, please click subscribe and you'll get notified anytime I upload a new video. If you want to see more, all of my links for social media are in the description. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.